There's a phenomena that is encouraged by advertising, the deceptive practices of advertisers. And it goes something like this. You're nothing. You're not good enough. You're not attractive. You're a schmuck. You're weird, whatever. But if you associate with this product, if you are friends with this person, if you hold this political office, if you drive this car, then you are something. In other words, the outer reality, the context, makes the person. Now, this is a very easy delusion to enter into in certain areas. If I drove that car, had that job, looked like this, if my face was altered like this, then I would be something. I could believe that I would have value. Now, as soon as we enter that belief, if I had this, if I could make this kind of art, if I could be responsible for this type of work, then I would be something. Now, there are a couple of foundations, that this delusion is resting on. Now, the first foundation for the delusion is the lie that we are not worth anything as we are, that our worth comes from a certain functionality. Now, this is a perception in sociopathic cultures, which are cultures of high pain, high incompetence, and consequent scarcity. In other words, if you have high competence in a universe with unlimited energy, you have superabundance. There is enough for all. There is enough for all, but in a low competency culture, there is not enough for all, right? If a farmer knows what they're doing and has an unlimited amount of land, there's enough food for all, right? If a farmer doesn't know what they're doing, even in an unlimited amount of land, there's no food, or there's very little, right? It just comes from luck or whatever, or superstition. And so there is not enough. When there isn't enough to meet our needs, our pain goes up. When our pain goes up, the reptilian brain kicks in, the sociopathic brain kicks in, and we're not interested in the presence, in the being of another person. We're interested in one thing. What can they do for us? What money can they make for us? What can they provide for us? Now, as a sociopath looking through the reptilian lens, people only have value to the degree that they have something I want, right? And so, right, insecure as we are, right, we imagine what it's like to look at us from the lens of the sociopath rather than from the lens of a human being. A human being sees value in being human, in presence, right? When we look through the eyes of the projected sociopath or our own sociopathic eyes, we only have value when we are useful for something. And one of the things that a sociopathic culture finds useful is looking good, not being good, not doing good, but looking good, looking attractive. Now, having established that, right, the first delusion is we have no value unless we provide a specific value. The second delusion is that looking good is more important than being good and any of the rest of it, right? And we then set out to look good, and that's when the advertisers come in. If you buy these shoes with this label, you'll look good. If you buy this toothpaste, you'll be a valuable person. If you don't, well, all deals are off, right? So then comes the third lie, right, which is, if you have this, buy this, look like this, then you are useful, right? And since there are a good number of sociopaths in a sociopathic culture, there's plenty of validation for that. Plenty of validation. Well, that doesn't look good. That's right. That would not be good for me, so I don't want to know you, right? When the bully picks on the small kid, if a friend shows up to advocate for the small kid, the bully tries to pick on them. And so the friend says, well, you're no good, right? If I help you, I'm going to get bullied, right? So in a reptilian world, it's about deal making. It's about being useful to one another. And so the advertisers rest on that foundation to try and provide false evidence. And, what's the false evidence? Well, if you're trying to look, good to a sexy young woman, the false evidence is you show up in these label, and they hire sexy young women to smile at only the person wearing their label. It's false evidence, right? If it wasn't for the advertisements, nobody would give a shit what the label was. But it's programming, right? And so now you've got to buy that thing to be worth something. And you can believe if you have enough stimulation. Now, what's enough stimulation? Well, it's just paid sponsorship, image correlation, right? Someone dressed like you, nobody likes. Why does nobody like them? Well, the advertisers pay all the actors not to like that, right? And then they have an expensive product. The person who wears the product, they pay the actors to like that, right? Well, if that's your reality and it just keeps washing in, pretty soon you feel like, gee, looking like me, I'm worthless, and looking like I would look, however dorky in that advertised product, well, I would be great. Now, it's a lie. You put it on and all the people ignore you and keep texting, and it seems like something wrong. Maybe if I buy another of their items, right, then it's a lie, right? You only see that in the advertising. But, nonetheless, that's the basis for a capitalist consumer cult. All cults are based on dogmatic lies that have a little bit of relevance, but not much. So you've got to have that item. Now, I would say that it's a temptation to put the value, to transfer the value from ourself into the item. Because, right, as shame-based, as trauma survivors in a traumatic culture, as shame-based survivors of a shame cult, right, we all have insecurity of our value. We have insecurity about our value because it doesn't make sense that we could be very valuable if we are constantly violated, constantly humiliated, constantly abandoned, constantly tormented, right? The inner child correlates external events with internal value, right? The child in every culture, when a parent hits a child, the child doesn't say the parent is fucked up. That's the truth, but that's not what the child says. The child says, I'm unlovable, right? And having had so many of those messages, right, come by the age of, reason, by the age, we feel a little insecurity in our value. Perhaps a lot. Perhaps we feel completely and utterly worthless. Now, it's the advertiser's job to get people to buy largely useless things by creating a rock-solid promise that if you wear their outfit, drive their car, then it has a rock solid image, right? And so you feel uncertain of your value. It's the advertiser's job to feel certain, to make the public feel certain in the value of their thing, right? So they do a lot of brainwashing to achieve that result. And if the thing has certain value and we have uncertain value, it's easy to peg the value on the thing. Okay, I'll buy this thing and then I'll have value, right? The problem, right, what makes this so dangerous and why it's a temptation is first of all, it doesn't pan out, right? I don't know if you've noticed this, but if you buy Gucci sunglasses and Rolls Royces and all of that, everyone doesn't stop and smile, right? And those that do don't want to have sex with you, and those that do are gold diggers, and doesn't work out anyway. And so that's all a lie. It doesn't happen the way it happens in the ad. That's the first lie. And the second is, if it does, you're dealing with morons, right? Right. Morons who have been brainwashed into believing the advertising lies, which are not the people you want to be dealing with. Right? And the third thing is it's never enough, right? Because as soon as you've decided that you've got to have the external thing to have value, you're now vulnerable to all advertising. Well, you don't quite feel solid in your value. You did buy a Rolls Royce, but now you should buy a Porsche. Then you'll have value, right? So that is just the endless trail of lies and consumerism, right? But also you notice at some point it doesn't work. You're not, after pursuing the consumerism treadmill for 10 years, you're not happier or more secure in your value than you were in the beginning. Now you've actually, since you've transferred your value onto things, you are now in a much more precarious situation, because an earthquake, a thief, a fire, a divorce, an IRS audit, right, a competitor, all these things, tidal wave, could take it all away from you. And with it, it's not just your things, it's your value that's being taken away. So what to do? What to do? Well, I think one thing is to understand, there is a belief in our internal value that is at a certain metric, right? I deserve this much. I value myself this much, whatever. And then there is the belief we associate with an item. Like we could say that, okay, I have some value, but if I had a new Rolls Royce, well, that's more valuable than I am. If I could just get that, then my value would go up. So this is the point of trade-in. You don't trade in. You don't say, I have this much value, this thing is worthless, I'll buy this crappy car and then I'll have less value. You don't ever buy something to have less value. So you always buy something that you think will give you more value than you believe that you have, right? That's the greed. That's, I want that, because that I would be one of those valuable people, right? So that's the temptation point. When you could buy something, meaning you've got the money, maybe you'd have to take out a loan, maybe you'd have to take some risk, maybe you'd have to have some leverage, but you could buy it, right? Or you could go into debt and buy it, whatever. Make it in installments, right? But you believe, if I could just have that house, then we'd have it made. If I could have that car, that house, and I can do it. I can just do it. If I max out my credit card, I do this and this. then I just need to hang on to this thing, because if I lose it, then I'm crashing down, right? It's proof that I wasn't good enough and all that. This is the point to, so the temptation is I'm going to get it, right? But the reality is what happens as soon as you, quote, trade up, max out your stuff, you feel smaller, because now you could lose it, right? You feel small, right? So you actually lost height, you feel smaller, you feel poorer, you feel more of a slave, like I got to make that payment, right? So you feel worse, and I've got to hang on to this, because then I'll feel even worse, and then I'll feel like I was dumb, I should never have done it, right? And now I'm even more worse because I'm dumb. So that's kind of a common trap. It's one of the reasons that people's income can be very high and they can still be basically bankrupt, because they keep buying everything they possibly can. So what's the solution? And I'm looking at this in my own life in various ways. When and why to buy a new car. Oh, if I could just have the latest electric pickup or this, right? Then something, right? Something would happen. My value would go up, right? I think that a good discipline for sustainable well-being, right, is first of all to do work to dissolve these delusions. That's the first thing, right? So you just don't believe value comes from that. And since value does not come from the car you drive or whatever, right? If you don't believe, right, that it does, you can enjoy your life in a range of living standards and stuff much more than someone desperately trying to get something from something. And then look at who you are, what you value yourself, and keep the focus on that and being the person that you want to be and respect. If you value honesty, be a bit more honest, right? And your value will go up in your own eyes. If you value competency, like you admire someone who does something well, learn to do something well that's useful, and then do it, right? And create value in that way. Next, I think it's easiest not to transfer value to things or become valued for things if you buy and have things slightly below what? Below your spending capacity, right? So don't go into debt. And if you could afford, a $100,000 car, buy a $70,000 car, right? Buy things below your earning capacity, one, right? Put more money in investments, right? So spend below your spending capacity, put more money in investments, pay cash for things, don't go into debt, and just don't start the whole addictive loop. And if you keep your objects, right, somewhere at, I don't know, I think 70% of your capacity is a reasonable one. Like if you put 30% of your money into savings, investments, and nonprofit activities, that type of thing, and then 70% of your money goes into things that make things more comfortable. And you don't buy labels, you buy things that are experiences and things that are actually enjoyable, then it's much easier to keep the focus on you. As soon as, and I think the worst thing you can do is buy double your spending capacity where everything has to work out, and then start getting enraged at people for undermining you. Because as soon as you spend beyond your means, so what is spending beyond your means? You tell a customer, oh, I can do that. My team can do that. We'll have that done for you by Monday. but the team is untrained, stupid, unmotivated, and they're not going to get it done by Monday. So now so you feel great while you make the promise, and then you feel like a schmuck as Monday comes around, you're only half done. So now you hate your team because you overspent, you overpromised. You feel dependent on the team. Come on, make me look good, make me look good. They looked at me they were impressed at me because I said I was going to do this by Monday, but I didn't do it on Monday. And you made me look bad. Now I look good, now I look stupid, right? So when you overpromise, you create a dependency, usually on other people, or or on yourself. Like you then turn to yourself, come on, let's get this all done, right? But then you're dependent on parts of yourself that aren't interested in. You're the one who overpromised it. I want to enjoy my Sunday, right? I mean, so you create a dependency in that way, right? If you go into debt, right, you buy a business and you have this amount, now you've got a resentment, now you've got a dependency on this people and this people. Don't create a dependency, right, where you can't deal with, or you enter a client relationship, right, and your lifestyle is such that if that client doesn't buy a large amount from you, you can't maintain your lifestyle, and if you can't maintain your lifestyle, then your worth goes down. So now you're dependent on that client. Now you're anxious with that client. You're in a dependent state, right? So you go over-leveraged anytime you overpromise, anytime you put yourself in a situation where you need a lot, or you create a vision. If I could live like this, if I could live like an artist on the ocean with a beach like this, with this, then I would be made. Then everyone would agree that I was a good person, I was a valuable person, whatever. I've got to get that beach. Look at the prices. What are they thinking? Rip-offs, right? Because now I need that vision. I need it in order to have any value. Now I'm angry at the person doing the attorney, and I'm angry at all these people because without them, I have no value. And I feel it, right? I sold my value to them, and without them, I have no value, right? I make a video, but you didn't like it. You didn't do that, right? And I put all that energy in. If you don't like it and do this and this and this, then I have no value. So I resent you. What's that comment there? You didn't, because it's always an investing in the external, right? I'm going to do this, and I'm going to hire this, and I'm going to do this, the best thing, and I can't afford it, and I can't do this, but I don't have the time, but I'm going to really do this. But then you've got to tell me that I'm wonderful and that I'm good enough, right? And if you don't, then the whole thing rips apart, and I resent and hate everyone, right? So, right? So in general, the first thing is keep the value inside, not in the accomplishment. Now, in a chauvinistic cult, the cult will value you, not for being a person. The cult will value you for having $1 billion or having a bestseller. The cult will value you based on different cult metrics. If you agree with them, when they all say, oh, aren't you wonderful? You say, well, this isn't so bad. Maybe my value does come from this, and your value goes up. If you agree with them, and you only agree when it goes up, then when it goes down again, they say, oh, they're a washed up writer, there's this, they're that. Well, now it goes down again, and it feels terrible, right? Now, I think it is so easy to transfer value to other people, like, oh, other people think this is great, right? I think it's so easy to transfer value to other people that it's not good to take on something where you're too tempted to do that. Like if you have the misfortune to think that being part of a royal family makes you a special person, it doesn't, but if you have the misfortune to believe that, and somebody invites you to get married to a royal, don't do it, right? Because it's going to be very, very tempting to to hold on to it. And then if if the royals don't like you, you're going to be a worthless person, etc. Just say, no, I don't want to be married to a royal. And sometimes you can work with the beliefs around that. But in general, keep your reality lower than your sense of self and focus on the self. I have value because I exist, because life sees a purpose for me. If life didn't see a purpose for me, I would not be here. I have value. And I'm growing that sense of value. I'm growing the things that I respect and admire, bit by bit. And I'm not going to put it on like, did I make the baseball team? Did I get 1 million? Did I get this? Whatever. It's more, I'm going to focus on qualities and strengths that I find good and beautiful. And I'm going to let go of the distractions, of the temptations of things that just don't do, right? That don't add to that growth process, or that distract from it, right? Because the other thing that can happen is, right, you buy the Gucci this, the Ferrari, and people are interested in the car, and they're not interested in you. They're interested in the car, right? If you show up in a little Chevy, they're not going to be at all interested in the car. But then that allows you to see who's actually interested in you, right? So the bottom line is, don't mortgage yourself to the outer reality, right? Don't rack up massive amounts of student loans in the idea that it's going to make you a lot of money and then it's going to be worth something, right? Don't commit yourself to a marriage that everyone says is a great marriage and promise you're going to be there for the rest of your life. It's a pretty big mortgage, right? The rest of your life, I'll do this and I won't do this for the whole rest of my life, because everyone agrees that marrying a rich person or is the right thing, right? But, I don't personally feel a great affinity. I just have all my friends saying, what a catch, what a catch, what a catch. And I want their validation, right? So I get married, right? So don't marry someone that everyone else says is amazing, that you're not really connected with. Don't spend on anything. Don't go into debt to buy things that seem like they'll give you worth, right? Spend less than you make. And don't form relationships with social climbers, right? That are just trying to connect with you so that you look good, right? And if you don't look good, that makes it easier, right? Because then they stay away from you to begin with, right? If you're just an amazing person that you enjoy spending time with, and you don't have any of the trappings of cult rank, well, nobody seeking cult rank will waste your time, right? And you can spend time with, a few people that enjoy presence and a low-key appreciation of life.